Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into something pretty fascinating.
Always.
Today, we're going beyond those typical historical portrayals and looking deeper at George Washington as a person, really.
Yeah.
We've got some excerpts from Prilipiano Besedalo. George Washington, leader, humorist, and symbol of American democracy.
Okay.
And, well, I think we all know the basics, right? Led the Continental Army.
Right.
Became the first president.
Of course.
But this deep dive, it's going to uncover a side of him that we don't always hear about.
Interesting.
The sense of humor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the source materials, it actually has some pretty amusing anecdotes.
I like anecdotes.
Yeah. And what we want to do is see what those anecdotes tell us about Washington.
Right.
Not just as, this historical figure, but as a person.
Yeah. I mean, we always picture him as so stoic.
Right. Like almost like a statue.
Exactly.
Yeah. Unsmiling.
Very serious.
All about dignity.
Dignity was important.
Oh, absolutely.
But he was also known for his humor, especially by those close to him.
Really?
Yeah. And it wasn't like this boisterous kind of humor.
Yeah.
It was more subtle, dry.
So why is it important? Like, why should we care that George Washington had a sense of humor?
Well, I think it helps us understand him better.
Okay.
Not just as this figurehead,
Yeah.
but as a human being with complexities.
Right, like a real person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Someone we can maybe even relate to a little bit.
Okay, well, let's jump into one of these anecdotes then.
All right.
This one takes place at Mount Vernon, his estate,
Okay.
and there's this group of visitors.
Uh-huh.
They're having an iron bar throwing contest.
An iron bar throwing contest.
Yeah, seeing who could throw the farthest.
Oh, wow.
So you could just imagine the scene, right? Everyone's trying their best.
Trying to impress.
Yeah, exactly. Showing off a little.
Yeah.
And then Washington comes out.
He joins in.
Well, he's already in his later years at this point.
Okay.
And he just steps up.
Uh-huh.
Effortlessly throws the bar farther than anyone else.
Oh, wow.
And then he says, "When you surpass my throw, gentlemen, I'll try again."
What a power move.
Right. Like, I'm not even trying and I'm still the best.
Exactly. And it's so subtle.
Yeah.
Like, he's not being arrogant about it.
It's just matter of fact.
Yeah, but it definitely shows his competitive spirit.
And even in this lighthearted setting,
Mm-hmm.
he's still asserting his leadership,
Absolutely. Like, I'm still in charge here.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if he used this kind of subtle power play in political settings, too.
Oh, I'm sure he did.
It's fascinating to think about.
Definitely.
Well, let's go on to another story. This one involves General Israel Putnam,
Okay.
known for his colorful language.
Oh, yeah. Putnam.
So the story goes, Putnam is letting loose a string of curses,
Uh-oh.
totally unaware that Washington's within earshot. When he realizes Putnam is mortified.
I bet.
So how does Washington react?
Well, instead of, reprimanding him, he says, I know I did the same when I was younger, and I am willing to believe you'll do it less often as you grow older.
Wow, what a response. He just diffused the whole situation.
Right. With humor.
Yeah, and it shows a real understanding of human nature.
Absolutely.
And his leadership style, he seems to favor encouragement over harsh discipline.
It's very effective.
Yeah.
I mean, he recognized that Putnam's swearing wasn't malicious,
Right.
just part of his personality.
Yeah, and this ability to use humor to navigate those tricky situations seems to pop up a lot in his life.
It does.
Well, speaking of tricky situations, let's talk about the Battle of Monongahela.
Okay.
During the French and Indian War,
Right.
Washington's in incredible danger.
This is where he has 2 horses shot out from under her.
Yeah, and his coat is pierced by 4 bullets.
It's amazing he survived that.
It really is.
I mean, rumors even started going around that he'd been killed.
Yeah, people thought he was dead.
And what does he do? He writes a letter to his brother. Yeah, and he casually mentions these rumors. He says, as I've heard since my arrival in this place, there is a detailed account of my death and dying speech circulating. I take this opportunity to deny the former and assure you that I have yet to compose the latter.
He's making a joke about his own death.
He is, and it's so witty, especially considering what he just went through.
It reminds me of that Mark Twain quote.
The reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated.
That's the one. Do you think Twain maybe got that from Washington?
It's possible. Washington's letter predates Twain's quote by over a century.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It is, and it really highlights his resilience and his ability to find humor even in the most perilous situations.
Yeah, this guy was incredible.
It's interesting, right? This dry wit
Yeah.
and this ability to turn a potentially frightening situation into something lighthearted. It appears in a lot of other stories about Washington.
Okay, so we see more of this lighter side of him.
Oh, yeah, and it creates this fascinating contrast between his serious public image.
Right, the stern general.
Exactly.
And then this more playful private side.
Right, so what kind of stories are we talking about? What reveals this lighter side?
I'm curious.
Well, for one, his dogs.
His dogs.
He gave them some pretty amusing names.
Oh, this is where we get Sweet Lips and Drunkard.
And Tipsy.
Tipsy, yeah. It's hard to picture this stoic general with dogs named Tipsy and Drunkard.
I know, right? But it gives us this glimpse into a more playful, affectionate side that the public rarely saw.
It's funny because we don't really think about historical figures having pets.
Right, like they just exist in these portraits.
Exactly.
But they had lives outside of all that.
Okay, so we see it with the dogs anywhere else.
Oh, yeah, his letters. There's this one he wrote to Martha Washington's brother when a child was born.
Oh, wow, so like a birth announcement.
Kind of, but he jokingly warns the new father not to neglect his crops.
His crops.
Particularly tobacco.
Oh, what does he say?
He writes that tobacco is attacked by every vile worm that has existed since Noah's days. How unkind it was of Noah to permit such a brood to get on board the ark.
He's blaming Noah for tobacco worms.
I know, it's hilarious.
It's a very unique way to give advice.
Right. And it just shows that he could be lighthearted, even in just, routine correspondence.
So it wasn't all serious business all the time.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he lacked seriousness when it came to, matters of principle.
This is where we get to the story about him being asked if he ever considered becoming king.
You got it.
That's a big question.
Yeah. And his response is classic Washington.
What did he say?
He said, "We fought against the tyranny of kings. Why would we now create one?"
Perfect response.
Right. It shuts down the whole conversation.
And it showcases his commitment to Republican values.
Exactly. But delivered with that dry wit.
Of course.
Always with the wit.
So we've got the dogs, the letters, the king question. Any other stories that show this side of him?
Oh, yeah. There's one where he's discussing farming techniques with some friends.
Yeah.
And they ask him if he knows how to milk a cow.
Do they think he's too fancy to milk a cow?
Maybe. But Washington, being Washington...
He doesn't just answer with words.
Nope. He milks a cow right then and there to prove his point.
Oh, wow. So he's a man of action.
Always.
And this shows that he wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty.
Right. Like he wasn't above everyday activities.
Yeah, very grounded. Okay, I have to hear about this chair incident everyone keeps mentioning.
Oh, this is a good one. It happens during his presidency.
Okay.
At a formal dinner.
So fancy setting.
Very fancy. And someone accidentally leans back in their chair and tips over.
Oh, no. I bet everyone was so embarrassed.
The room falls silent.
Yikes.
But Washington, he takes control. He stands up, carefully rocks his own chair back and forth.
He's testing it.
Exactly. And then he says very seriously, "Gentlemen, it seems the laws of balance still apply here."
I love that. He turned this awkward moment into a joke.
He was a master at that.
Yeah, but it also plays into this image of him as,
unflappable.
Yes, like always in control.
Always.
It makes me wonder, though, are there any stories about him losing his temper?
I mean, there are definitely accounts of disagreements, frustrations, but the prevailing image is definitely one of composure.
Self-control.
Yeah, which is why these glimpses into his humor are so interesting.
Right, they make him seem more human.
Exactly, but without diminishing,
the respect.
The respect he commanded.
Yeah, it's like finding out your superhero has a secret hobby.
I like that. Makes them more relatable.
It's like we've been looking at this painting, of Washington. And we've always focused on the serious expression, the uniform.
Right, the icon.
Yeah, but now we're seeing these little brush strokes.
The details.
Yeah, that reveal a whole other side to him.
A more human side.
Exactly. So what's the significance of all this? Why does it matter that,
That he had a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Well, I think it makes his accomplishments even more impressive.
Okay, how so?
Because here's this man who led a revolution,
right,
shaped a nation, became a symbol of democracy.
Yeah, huge accomplishment.
And yet he never lost this ability to connect with people on a personal level.
So it's not just that he achieved great things, but that he did it while still being,
relatable.
Yeah, human.
Exactly. He could laugh. He could make a joke.
He could milk a cow?
He could milk a cow. He wasn't this distant, unapproachable figurehead.
These stories really paint a different picture.
They do, and I think they make his legacy even more compelling.
So it's not just about, remembering the historical facts.
Right. It's about understanding the man behind those facts.
The whole person.
The complete human being.
And maybe that encourages us to look at other historical figures differently, too.
I think so.
To think about those hidden depths, those surprising, relatable sides to their personalities.
Because even the most serious, iconic figures,
They were still people, just like us.
it's been really fascinating,
It has.
exploring this side of George Washington.
I agree.
I think we've gained a much deeper appreciation for him.
Definitely.
And maybe learned a little something about ourselves in the process.
Always a good thing.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us.